Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Hey, look, man. When it comes to Earl, Spence, Crawford, there really is no one else at 147, to really even have this conversation about. But when it comes to Earl Spence and Terence Crawford, let me tell you, I sit back as a neutral party and I just watch. And let me tell you, Crawford and Spence is really, and their following is really like the Bloods versus the Crips. You know what I'm saying? Like, this really is like gangs, you know what I mean? It's absolute madness. I'm surprised Crawford and Spence fans haven't started biting each other yet. It's ridiculous. Like, I walk out the house, I got to think twice if I'm going to wear a little Crawford t-shirt or something, and somebody may run up on me. Or if I wear a Spence t-shirt, then a Crawford fan might pull up on me. You know what I mean? So it's you can't wear, it's like not wearing the wrong color. Back out there, man, in Seattle and Tacoma when I was a teenager, back out west. You know what I mean? You really can't wear the wrong color. It's like here with these guys, you can't wear the wrong t-shirt or support the wrong fighter, or you may have some problems. But nonetheless, I think we can all agree when we get beyond who we really like and who we think is the best, right? Pound for pound. We know both of them are the two number ones at 147. And the winner, if they ever fight, will become the undisputed. And the loser will be still number one because there is no one outside of these two who I think really gives you guys serious problems. I do think Virgil Ortiz is a threat. But other than that, I don't know. Terence Crawford and Earl Spence are the top dogs. But my thing is this, right? Because I was paying attention to some conversations out there on Twitter. And I said, damn, is Terence Crawford really pound for pound number one? Or is he just close to it? There was a lot of arguments about Canelo. There were arguments about Earl Spence. If Terence Crawford is listed as pound for pound number one, then Earl Spence should be. And I said, well, we start looking at what Terence Crawford has accomplished. Look, man, he's an exceptional fighter. All these guys are. I can't sit here and say, you may not like the way he moves because he's stubborn. Terence Crawford's stubborn as hell. He's going to march to the beat of his own drum. And that's just Terence Crawford. And a lot of people don't like that about him. But I think sometimes they allow that to affect how they view his skill set and his ring accomplishments. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, I don't know if I agree that he's the top dog in the whole sport, but I would tell you that I think it's fair to have him in that conversation. I think it's fair if somebody chose to put him there as the number one on the pound for pound list. But then we start talking about resumes and guys who have actually went out at 147 and as far as being put in a position as the top dog, living up to that position that they've been placed in. Now, let's be fair now, right? Crawford, Spence, they've proven to be just, too much for every opponent that these guys have gotten in the ring with. You know what I'm saying? Just too much. When these guys get in the ring, it's too much. But Terence Crawford in particular, when he goes southpaw, it's like I describe Crawford as Southpaw Man. He's a superhero. He will be Southpaw Man. And Terence Crawford is the superhero who will go into the phone booth, take off the shirt, take off the tie, and underneath there he'd have this red and blue costume and with a big S on his chest. And the S would be for Southpaw Man. Because we know when Terence Crawford turns Southpaw, the fight's over. And as a result of him having that ability to go southpaw, as well as fight outstanding in the orthodox stance, he's been able to amass, an outstanding world title reign across 3 divisions. And matter of fact, at 140, he was undisputed. So when you look at him being, what is he, 38, 39 and 0 or something like that, he's definitely one of the most gifted fighters. One of the most gifted that we've seen. Terence Crawford in his prime and Floyd Mayweather in his prime, that would have been a fun fight to watch. But Terence Crawford is still, I'm not going to say he's on the decline. What I'll say is he's been boxing for a long time now. So I'm not saying what we're getting in this next fight is a prime Terence Crawford. But it's like Mayweather. When Mayweather hit 35, going on 36, that wasn't a 25, 26-year-old Mayweather. But it was still a Mayweather that had more than enough to dominate his opponents and make them look average. So when we talk about making his opponents look average, that's what Terence Crawford has done to everyone that he's faced. And I know people are saying, well, he was supposed to do that to him. But if you take Terence Crawford out of the equation and you put someone else in there, maybe they struggle. More than likely, they will struggle. And the reason why Terence Crawford has been able to do that is because he's just one of those, gifted fighters and there's unreal talent there. But when people start talking about his resume, I can understand, I really can understand people having issues with him, with all of most of the opponents he faced outside fighting Yuriorkis Gamboa years ago, and then him fighting Sean Porter. You know, I can understand people having an issue with some of the other fights. Now, how he ended up in those positions, he was on Top Rank. People are saying that he chose the easy route by going after Jeff Horn. Look, what do you want? My thing is, what do you want Crawford to do? He's over there with Top Rank. You know, Jeff Horn had just fought Pacquiao. Bob Arum is out there trying to line fights up with him. And if there's an easier route to a title, that's what mostly any fighter would do. You know what I'm saying? But if there were more, to me, if there were a lot more opportunities, which you remember at the time, you know, Bob Arum really wasn't working with a lot of other promoters. It was all kind of turmoil. And then there were things going on behind the scenes with Bob Arum and Crawford, and Bob feeling a kind of way about things. But at the end of the day, right, when it comes to Crawford, he picked up the WBO title. But then you look at people questioning his resume, right? And I said to myself, why are they lacking to wanting to put this man on the pound for pound list? Well, it's probably because a lot of the guys he fought weren't pound for pound names. And when I had somebody kind of break it down like that, I said, you know what? That kind of makes sense. But not everybody are fighting opponents that have pound for pound names. And what I mean are guys who are ranked in the top 10 pound for pound across all weight divisions. You know what I mean? There's not just everybody can get put on a pound for pound list. But even at the weight division at 147, how many of these fighters at 147 actually had the opportunity to fight each other? You look at Danny Garcia, you look at Keith Thurman, you look at Sean Porter. They've put the work in. Okay? So if we're gonna, if that's the route or the direction we want to travel with this, well then we shouldn't be talking about Earl Spence either. But what I will say is, when you get Crawford who comes and he beats, Ricky Burns, fought Kell Brook, and Amir Khan, then again, like he got in there with Yuriorkis Gamboa, right? I mean, those names are good names, but you kind of struggle when you look at the fact that a guy like Earl Spence, who, in my opinion, was kind of in a very similar position until Earl Spence decided, you know what? I'm going to have to make some changes here. I'm going to have to do something. So Earl Spence fought Mikey Garcia. He fought Porter, Danny Garcia, and your Danish Yugas. Now, we understand the whole thing, PBC, the whole thing with Bob Arum Top Rank, whole thing with Terence Crawford deciding that he wanted to re-sign with Top Rank. We get all that. But for me, when I look at it and listening to Crawford fans and Spence fans argue about who's the better fighter, especially when they attack Terence Crawford, because, man, they're vicious on Terence Crawford. When they bring that argument up, my thing is, and I know a lot, but I don't know everything, right? Because I get some of you guys that only follow Terence Crawford or only follow Earl Spence. I try to keep up with a little bit of everything with everyone. But sometimes I don't get all the way down the weeds on this. But my thing is, you guys tell me, right? Because I'm just having a conversation. Could Terence Crawford could he have received the opportunity to really, get in the ring with a Mikey Garcia? Could he have really had the opportunity to get in the ring with a Danny Garcia? Did Danny Garcia outprice himself? Terence Crawford and your Danish Yugas. What's the story behind that? I see so many different things out there. Oh, Yugas beat Crawford before in the amateurs. Crawford was ducking Yugas. He could have fought him. He chose not to fight him. Yugas didn't want to fight Crawford. There's so much crap out there that, to be honest with you, I don't know what to believe. But what I will say is, when you look at Crawford's resume and you look at Earl Spence's resume, to me, at 147, when Earl Spence went out there and he fought, Mikey Garcia, Porter, Danny Garcia, and Yugas, right? I think those bouts really helped to boost his profile. I do. I really feel that helped him a great deal. And for Terence Crawford, he fought Porter. He fought Amir Khan, but come on, Amir Khan at that time, he fought Kell Brook at that time. But what I will tell you, and this is my opinion, you see this Kavialaskis fella, they call a meme machine. For some reason, people don't want to give Terence Crawford the kind of credit he deserves for beating Kavialaskis the way he did. Let me tell you, Terence Crawford beat Kell Brook, Kavialaskis, Amir Khan, Jose Benavidez, Jeff Horn, and Dongo. Look, Felix Diaz, John Molina Jr., Victor Postal at a time when nobody wanted to fight him, Henry Lundy, Derry Jean, Thomas Delerme, who is a monster. He's on the decline now, but don't come in at like Thomas Delerme wasn't a problem. And then, Raimundo Beltran, right? Some people question those victories. Some people question those opponents. Some people don't want to give Crawford credit for those wins. And people say, well, look, out of all of those guys, really, only Brook and Khan, those names jump out. And those guys are the ones that kind of hung around for a while and were fighting with the best fighters. So outside of those two, it's kind of hard to give Crawford credit for those other opponents. But I'll say this, right? At the end of the day, what I truly believe is really hurting Crawford right now when it comes to fans is that Crawford walked away for his own reasons, right? We understand the man's got to do what he's got to do. I'm not saying he's wrong, but it's like he's having a hard time, in my opinion, recovering when it comes to boxing fans for moving away from that Spence fight. So then you look at the position he's in now. I've been talking about this for months with people on the channel, and some of the people on the channel I've actually become friends with, and we've talked offline. We were calling this stuff about Rocha. I mean, months ago. I started talking about this in April of last year, where I said, this is the direction this is going to go with this guy Rocha. So now you see Terence Crawford is in a position right now where he has to fight Rocha as his mandatory. I mean, for me to say, look, there's nothing he can do about it. He has to fight him as a mandatory. But the question then becomes, well, how did he end up in this position? And people say, well, Crawford's creating his own misery because he chose to go fight a Vanessian, and as a result, missed the opportunity to go in for an undisputed distinction with Spence. Probably could have made a lot more money. And now he's here in a position where he's about to fight Rocha or be stripped, and he probably won't make any kind of money near what he would have made or would make if he would fight Spence. Now, this is a thing. I did a video, and people were telling me basically I'm crazy because I said, you know what, Earl Spence and Crawford, there's a possibility of them, still fighting. I don't think so. I personally don't think it's going to happen. But it's always a possibility if they decide to sort things out. But then I talked about Crawford wanting to go ahead and exercise his super champion status and maybe bubble up and fight Jamel. I didn't say that's going to happen. I put a question mark at the end of the title of the video because it's like, hey, is this something he may entertain? Because some people think Crawford against Rocha, some people think Crawford's going to make $7 million, $8 million. How? Don't take it to the stupid. How the hell is Crawford going to make $7 million against Rocha? $5 million against Rocha? I personally don't think he's going to make, and I don't know this. It's just, here having a conversation, right? And just looking at how things are going with other promoters and other big name fighters where they're getting these very low guarantees of $500,000, $1 million, 1.5, and then they throw the fight on pay-per-view and the fight and pray that it does well, so these guys the promoters can, give these guys a few more million on top of the guarantee. But we know it hasn't been quite working out that way for every big name because not every big name translate to huge pay-per-view numbers. So we got to wait and see what's going to happen with Crawford and Rocha and the payout. But look, Canelo Alvarez, there's a lot that can be learned from him. And I'm not saying that because of Canelo Alvarez. Some people still see him as pound for pound number one. Canelo Alvarez stood up to the sanctioning bodies, although they've kind of taken care of him at the same time. But he said, look, he's not going to let a sanctioning body force him to go fight someone. So he dropped the belt. And with Terence Crawford, I don't know if he'll drop that WBO belt, but he's stubborn. He marches to the beat of his own drum. And I wouldn't be surprised if Terence Crawford said, you know what? Everybody is on me because basically they're being called a duck, Duckosaurus, Terence, Quackford, all kind of stuff I'm hearing people say about this man. And I don't agree with it. I like all the fighters, but I understand when Terence Crawford said he has a family, that's his priority, and he means that, and he really doesn't care what anyone thinks. But I think Terence Crawford does. I'm not saying he loses sleep over things, but I think it does bother him a little bit that now he has to go and fight basically Rocha, who is not someone who's been reigning at the top of the welterweight division and who's won titles, maybe lost titles, but who's not a big name. So here it is, Crawford, for the same thing people have been complaining about when it comes to him and his career, especially at 147, of not fighting the top dogs at 147. He ends up in a position again where he's fighting, let's just be real, a B-level fighter. Now, Rocha can fight. He's been active. I've been following Rocha. I think Rocha is a live dog. I don't think he beats Crawford, but I think he could be more competitive. It's going to be more competitive than what some people are thinking. And most of the people who are speaking negatively about Rocha, they probably never even saw him fight. Now, don't get me wrong. Rocha's best win was against Blair Cobb. I mean, that's just the truth. And when he did get in there against a guy who was another top prospect, was Rashidi Ellis, he lost. It was competitive, but he lost. But he went back to the lab, made some refinements, and came back a better fighter. And he's on, 5-6 fight win streak now. So I think that for Terence Crawford should give him something to worry about. And I think that Rocha, we shouldn't just come and just figure that Crawford is just going to come in there within the first round and just dead him. I just don't see that happening. I think Rocha is a live dog, and he's going to come in there. He's going to come in there to put some work in. I just think it doesn't matter who Crawford fights, honestly. Once he goes and turns into a southpaw man, the fight's over. So that being said, we will see what happens when it comes to Crawford. Do I understand why a lot of fans feel that he's close to pound for pound number one, but he is not pound for pound number one? I understand. When they start to break down the opponents he's fought and they look at the names, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, you got to peel the layers all the way back to understand the circumstances and the reasons why he didn't have the opportunity to fight some of those other names. But at the same time, I get it. He had an opportunity to leave Top Rank. And I'm going to be honest with you. To this day, I'm not sure why. And maybe some of you guys can leave that in the comments, right? I haven't got a clear answer on why Crawford just refused to sign with Al Heyman and PBC. I don't get it. I understand him re-signing with Top Rank. I still can't understand that, but at the same time, hey, it's where you're comfortable. I get it, but if you're trying to make the biggest fights, why not just sign to Al Heyman? If you look at everything Al Heyman has done for the fighters underneath him, even when we think that there's trouble in paradise, for example, this whole thing with Andy Ruiz and what's his name, Wilder. The way it was coming across is that Wilder fired Heyman. Andy Ruiz fired Heyman. They left him. Hell, not even a week later, they come in and clear things up. They're still with Team Heyman. They're open agents. So what it tells you is Al Heyman has a brilliant mind, and he gets out in front of issues. He's proactive. He's not a reactive advisor, manager, promoter, because he wears all those hats. I don't care what he says. But he gets out in front of issues before they happen. Al Heyman is smart. He has great optics. And I think Al Heyman really does have the best interest for fighters. So my thing is, I just can't understand why Terence Crawford wouldn't sign to him. So if anyone out there has something definitive, like me, I'm just talking, having a conversation. I've spit some facts in this video, but some of it is just, me having a conversation with you. But if anyone knows definitively why Crawford just, till this day, doesn't want to at least do like a 2-fight deal, a 3-fight deal, let me know. Is it money? I understand he wants his freedom. I understand. I get that. But if you're trying to get a Spence fight, and they promise you some other fights for decent money, guarantees, if that's the case, I just don't see why Crawford wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Because he's out here right now being put in a position to fight Rocha, where I don't think he's going to make the kind of money that he's looking for. But then again, I could be wrong. Because some of you guys, like I said, you guys are passionate about Crawford, you're passionate about Spence, and I'm sure when you get ticked to the comments, you guys will kick some knowledge and get me up to speed on some things. And like I said, I've been following Crawford. I've been following Spence. I follow all fighters' careers. But I don't sit here and focus on these guys like some of y'all are just like that's it. You're just locked in on Crawford and Spence. But that being said, I don't know. Is Crawford pound for pound number one or just close to it? When you look at the resumes, is his resume better than someone like Keith Thurman's? Better than someone like Sean Porter's? Is it better than Earl Spence's? And if it's not, was that because people ducked him? Was that because Bob Arum precluded him from getting those fights? Or is it because PBC and Top Rank weren't working together? You know what I'm saying? There's got to be more to it than just Crawford didn't fight these guys, so it's his fault. Or Earl Spence didn't fight Crawford, so it's Earl Spence's fault. I think there's got to be more to it. But one thing I do know is, guys like Keith Thurman wanted a lot of money. Danny Garcia wanted a lot of money. The only one out there who seemed to be, one of those fighters who just doesn't care and will fight anyone is Sean Porter. But my understanding is Sean Porter got paid handsomely, and so did Terence Crawford. But that being said, y'all leave your comments below. Let me know what y'all think. But I will say this. If we're going to talk about resumes, we need to be talking about Jaron Ennis, because Jaron Ennis has a lot of fights. And he could be going on the same path as Terence Crawford and Earl Spence. But Jaron Ennis has to start getting some big names on his resume. And if he doesn't, are we going to start saying that he's a duck? Are we going to start saying that he shouldn't be pound for pound? What are we going to start saying about Ennis? He's got a title now. Yeah, he has some work to do, but Ennis has been fighting for a while. So let's make sure that we remember that when we're talking about Spence, talking about Crawford. If that's the case, then we got Ennis, who's on their heels. Let's keep that same energy when it comes to him. And we know right now with Jaron Ennis, he hasn't ducked anyone. He's trying to get big fights. Some people don't want to fight him. We're going to see what he does in the next couple of years. But you look at the amount of fights Jaron Ennis has. Why hasn't he fought any real killers? That's all I'm saying. But that being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Is Crawford pound for pound #1 for real? Or is he just close to it? Or for the people who are saying he isn't, is it just because they don't like him and they totally despise him now because he walked away from the Spence fight? Y'all let me know. I'm in the breeze.